What's up, YouTube? Doing another update on the WP shock on this 89 ATK 406. And guess what I don't have? I don't have a shock that works. Yet. So I've spent the better part of the day taking this apart, putting it back together. At first I was convinced that I just wasn't getting all of the air out of the shock. So I went to Harbor Freight and spent 20 bucks on one of those little vacuum pumps. It's right there. And I hooked that up to this little container on the ground. Right there. And I made this little stopper plug. It has a little barb on it. And so that's how I started to bleed it. I would fill this as much as I could, and I would start with the piston bottomed out so that I can adjust it. And after I got it bled decently, I ran this cap down, and it took me a little while to figure out it's not supposed to be flush with the threads. At least I hope it's not. That may be another problem. But when it's that low, that's when it really sandwiches up against that seal head in there and presses your oil seal together. And so after I got it with as much oil as I felt comfortable, I would then, let's see what side, kick it on its side and pull this little knob and then yank the guts out for the compression adjuster. And because it's laying flat, this is pointing up. So then I could put that little stopper in there, hook up my vacuum pump, and draw oil out. And so I had a little apparatus where I had my, my gun is up here because I put my reservoir here and then ran my tube all the way down so it always had oil in it. And so I could sit there and watch as I'm pumping, bubbles coming out and then fluid getting drawn back in, and just as little vacuum as possible. And it seemed to me like I wasn't able to get all the air out, like almost like it was drawing air in. And so I thought maybe I'm running into trouble having this piston bottomed out in here, because you've got this full reservoir that I'm trying to fill with fluid and then get all the air bubbles out, only to end up pushing that piston almost all the way to the top. So I thought, well, maybe I should try it with the piston at the other end so that I've got as little fluid in there as possible, like my piston set as close as possible. I figured less fluid, less air. And I tried with this shock extended, with the shaft extended, with it compressed. So I've had this thing apart like 5 or 6 times now, and I could pretty much tell you every part in here by memory and what it looks like, what size it is. And I finally got tired of messing around with the air chuck, because I was just testing it with like 90 and 100 and 120 psi, and then I said, screw this, next time I get it together I'm just going to throw 200 psi nitrogen at it and see what happens. And so right now it's got 200 in it, and this is what the shock is doing. It pushes down nice, there's not a lot of air, but all those little bubbles right there, they're coming out from the threads. And obviously with 200 psi, this thing should rebound on its own, and it's not. It's just sitting there. With 100 psi, this thing should rebound on its own. So I was convinced that I was sucking air through that oil seal because it's such a goofy seal and I don't know anything about them. But when I saw those bubbles coming out from the threads, I thought, man, that is a problem, because if bubbles are coming out, bubbles are coming in, which is why when I was trying to bleed it with the vacuum, I would just never really stop getting bubbles. So this is traditionally just a dust cap. It's a dust cover. And this one happens to have the dust seal in it. So I thought, I guess in my brain I was thinking, since this is like the end cap of the body, it doesn't really matter if this is sealed up. I thought all the sealing was happening down in here. And I know this was like thread locked on there, but I thought it was mostly just like an abundance of caution to keep this thing from rotating loose. But now it seems kind of obvious that that needs to seal up, just as this shock body would need to seal up down here, and just as this would need to seal up. And there is an O-ring on there, and it didn't have one. Well, let me take it back. There's a receiver groove in this cap for an O-ring, and it didn't have one. I found one to put on there, but I don't really think it's doing much. And I'm pretty sure I heard that you don't need an O-ring on this. But I am going to have to seal that. And thread locker isn't going to work too good, because it's, you know, you're getting fluid in here, and so it's kind of hard to keep the threads dry. So I'm going to take this apart again and wrap this thing with some Teflon tape and really cinch it down good, like I want it to seal, and then pressurize it and see what's going on. And I'm hoping that's going to be all of my problems. But that's an update for now. I'm not giving up yet, but it's just really starting to wear on me. Thanks for watching. Peace.